welcome to SVG-TV's news for Wednesday, April 28, 2021. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. Director of Forestry Fitzgerald Providence said that 75% of the forest on the Lasufera Mountain has been destroyed. He said while some parts still have vegetation in the yellow and green zones, the red and orange zones close to the volcano were severely damaged by heat and volcanic ash.
Major break-in or damage to the trees, but in the yellow and orange zones you would have had damage to the trees, and it depends on where the heavy ashfall would have taken place. So we assessing these valleys and the forest areas to ensure that there's minimal to see the damage and how we can look at repairing those damaged areas. We also have forest plantations that have been impacted by the eruption, and we're also looking at how we can assess the damage and what can we do to recover these areas.
Providence said flora and fauna were also heavily impacted, noting that the Vincentian parrots have been affected by the ash.
We were able to recover one parrot, but it didn't survive. It shows evidence of starvation and dehydration, and also there was a lot of ash in the eye. I guess when it fell out of the tree, it would have fallen into the ash. That parrot, as I said, did not recover. But however, as we go into the forest, we are hearing the birds. That means they are there and they have survived these initial eruptions.
The forestry director is appealing to the forestry officers to work closely with the forestry division to save the forest, birds and animals.
We're looking to do some bird feeders in the forest, along as into also providing fresh water for the animals in the forest. And if there are persons out there who are living close to forested areas and want to help out in this, they can contact the forestry department, and we will be able to work with them. Also farmers and the observations around the farmlands, we also ask them to call us. In some areas, the birds and maybe also the parrot and other birds may come down to fruit trees in close to communities. We ask not to call the forestry department in terms of when these things occur.
The Biotechnology Center, located in Orange Hill in the red zone, will be relocated to the Greenhouse Park at Montreal in the Maricopa constituency. The Biotechnology Center stores a significant percentage of the germ plasma materials. Speaking on radio this morning, Minister of Agriculture Saboto Caesar said that during the preparation for the explosive eruption of Lasufera volcano, the ministry was able to move some of the seedlings out of the center. However, they lost a significant amount of assets.
Up food security during the period of COVID, and you heard about the thousands of seedlings that all of these were basically being prepared at the Orange Hill Center, which is in the red zone. So we were able to move out a lot of these prior to the eruption, the explosive part of the eruption, but there were just some things that we could not move. Right. And because of that, we have suffered significant damage to a lot of our infrastructural assets.
Minister Caesar noted that on Tuesday, a decision was made to do an assessment on the Greenhouse Park in Montreal, and that given the conditions in the red zone, they are hoping to move the remaining assets to an area in the safe zone.
Now we've lost our assets in the red zone at the biotechnology lab. We are in conversation now because we may actually need as a government to use that facility as whether it's an interim or medium term or long term, we don't know. But we have to get the government assets and the infrastructure for the ministry up and running. I just want persons who are listening to be aware of this, because, you know, there is this rule in first aid that you have to make sure that you are secured first. Right. Before you go out to help, because if you go out to help and you're not secured, then you could have two casualties. So we are working during this period, the next 2 weeks or so, to ensure that we have the resources available for all those assets, the infrastructure that we had in the red zone, that they are moved to safer areas.
Minister Caesar further added that provisions will be made to take workers from the shelters each day to continue their work at the center at its new location in the safe zone.
A very interesting observation yesterday. And when you move assets of the state from a particular area, we have to be aware, it's a very sensitive issue, that persons from that particular area would have worked at that particular facility. So let's use, for example, the tissue culture lab in Orange Hill. It's one thing to say to move the services to Montreal, but then the persons who were really trained to operate it are persons from Sandy Bay, persons from OEA, persons from Georgetown. And what we are going to do is, well, we started the process already. We know where all the workers are, which shelters they are in, and we are going to organize to have them picked up to be taken to work. Okay. So that we are, you could see we're returning to a state of normalcy as it pertains to the services to be rendered.
The Agriculture Minister said his ministry was very prepared with its four-phase program, which seeks to address issues concerning food production and productivity should there be an explosive eruption at La Soufrière. Speaking on radio this morning, Minister Caesar thanked all the workers in the ministry for their preparatory work done ahead of the explosive eruption of the volcano.
Persons may say in the meeting, we may be preparing for something that may never happen. But I really want to thank the technicians in the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor for the preparatory work that went into having the country very well organized and prepared for this eventuality which actually took place. So the phase one was always to do an assessment as to where the assets of the government in the red zone, where they were, and their vulnerability. Okay. So should there be an explosive eruption, taking into consideration the historical context, what took place in 1902, what took place in 1979, we had identified that there are some government assets that we had to move and move early.
The minister said that a significant number of animals in the red zone were tagged weeks before the explosive eruption, and that farmers will be able to identify their animals when they are back in their communities.
And the persons who are private sector stakeholders in the red zone, we identified also the levels of vulnerability, and we had started to work with them. So, for example, we had tagged a significant percentage of the animals in the red zone long before we had the explosive eruption. So persons who were advised to let their animals loose, when they return from the shelters, when the all clear is given, at least you may have a tag to work with. So we had prepared from a livestock standpoint for the private sector significantly, and for persons who are not aware as to how the livestock for the government is strategically placed, a lot is in the red zone. So
Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves said containers coming into the country with canned foods such as tuna, corned beef, sardine and sausages will be seized or confiscated at the port so that they can be tested under the Public Health Act. Speaking on radio yesterday, Prime Minister Gonsalves said that there are some requirements that persons should meet before bringing in meat products into the country.
Say that the customs is seizing them, because the customs is not seizing them. What is happening is that the veterinary division, animal health, public health, they're requesting clearly as part of the law that you fill out the requisite form which deals with health matters, because they're interested to knowing where these items originate, where were they manufactured. They have to look at the expiry date, if they have any suspicion, they may have to test. And very importantly, to be able to trace if there is any consumption which creates difficulties, they to trace, to identify, so that public health, animal health, that we can deal with the issue in a very scientific manner. I just want to indicate that to persons who are bringing things in.
Dr. Gonzalez said that though the government has agreed to duty-free concession on all containers and packages with relief supplies entering the country, persons still have to follow the laws relating to public health.
Still, we have to make sure that the elemental laws of the land, those relating to our health and so on, and everything else with accountability and transparency, that they're followed. I just want to make that point. It may be frustrating sometimes to someone who has to bring when they import these things, but the supermarkets know that. As a matter of course, they have to do these health checks.
Providing an update on the volcano on radio earlier today, seismologist Dr. Rotary Stewart said the seismic activity remains low. He noted that there has been no major changes in the activity since the last explosion on April 22nd. However, there are still a few long-period and hybrid earthquakes, heavy steaming coming from the crater with pyroclastic flows and lahars.
Yesterday we had activity that was not directly associated with the volcano, more secondary activity. About 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning yesterday, we had several lahars due to heavy rainfall, and these affected quite a number of the valleys around the volcano. And then we saw another feature which I don't think we've seen before. After the rain had passed, we could see a lot of steam coming out of one of the valleys. I think it was the Wallibu. Mm-hmm. And it was quite impressive, the amount of steam that was rising up. And this was caused by the runoff from the rain getting into the pyroclastic deposits. Because although these deposits on the surface are cool, if you've got a good thickness of deposits that have come down, the deposits at depth are still very, very hot. And the water from the rain was getting into those deposits and basically flashing to steam and creating this big white steam cloud coming out of the valley. I don't know if that was seen in any other valleys, but it could well have been. And it just illustrates the sort of the power involved in this volcano, that we've still got heat in these deposits.
And Dr. Stewart said the low level of seismic activity could suggest the volcano has subsided or is dying down. The volcanologist, however, noted that the main challenges that one has to face now is the mud flows, which also causes pyroclastic flow materials to destroy the forest and the parts of the valley where they travel.
But the heat is very localized. I mean, the pyroclastic flows are, the deposits that are left over are restricted to the sort of bottom of the valleys and the higher slopes of the volcano, and they're not going to move. So, I mean, I'm not really been involved in the assessment of damage from these flows in terms of agriculture. But I would have thought you could start as soon as it is safe to go to these places. I mean, we still feel it's not safe to go into the red zone to do work. So that, I think, is what would hold back any assessment more than the potential damage from the heat in these flows.
The volcano alert level remains at red. Investigate and remove officers found not fairly distributing the emergency relief supplies to persons who should get them. The appeal was made today by opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday at a virtual news conference. Dr. Friday said party supporters have complained that they are being left out due to their political affiliation. Friday said he takes the report seriously and a full investigation must be done.
Where they are found to have basis, steps must be taken urgently, vigorously, to remove the person who's causing the problem from that position where they can no longer do so, and to ensure equity and transparency in the dispensing of aid. This is not a party matter. It is not party resources. The aid is donated by governments, regional and international organizations, local businesses and charities, and numerous individuals.
The opposition leader said that the humanitarian aid should be a national response for all Vincentians affected by the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, and stressed the importance of transparency for the country as well as donors and other contributors.
It must be distributed on the basis of need only. That must be the principal criterion upon which you determine who gets what and when. No partisan consideration must be permitted to determine these questions. Where they exist, they need to be stamped out. We cannot have this as a repeating cycle in the recent history of this country, when people all over the world are making sure that the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines know that they're there to support them and that they will continue to do so.
Meanwhile, opposition Senator Siobhan John, who was an evacuee from the red zone community of Oya, said the authorities need to take steps to improve the accommodation at shelters for all evacuees. John said it is not known how long evacuees could be in shelters. Hence, continuous work must be done to improve their living conditions. Speaking on the recent police advisory for evacuees at shelters to dress properly or modestly, the opposition senator said likewise there is a need to address the accommodation at the various shelters.
Also asking for the amenities to be in place. Just this week, there was a report, notice sent out by the police as to the way people dress at the shelters, etc. Now, if we have shelters with little or no bathroom facilities, what do you expect? So these bathroom facilities must be put in place and must be proper for persons to be appropriately sheltered.
John said poor living accommodation can cause discomfort and affect the evacuees' mental health.
It is heartbreaking enough on us from the red zone to see the damage done to our properties, to the agricultural lands that we have and which we live by, and which we don't know how long it is going to take us to get back to normalcy. Therefore, they need to be comfortable because they can easily go into depression. When you move from one place to the next, it is a strain on one's mental health. So I'm hoping that these situations can be addressed by the relevant authorities very soon.
The Rotary Club in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has partnered with the Rotary clubs around the world in providing humanitarian support to displaced persons from the red zone. Speaking on a program on NBC Radio last evening, President of the Rotary Club, Annette Mark, said that so far they have received a number of supplies from different institutions and clubs, internationally, regionally, and locally.
What has happened since then is that the outpouring of support from the district, and when I say the district, we have a number of districts in respect to each area there's a number for each district, and we are district 70-30, and there are other districts depending on where they are, but within our own district alone, the support from Rotarians and other clubs, it's been very overwhelming. We've also had clubs reach out to us from other outside of the district, from the US, from Ireland, from Canada, the UK. There's just this continuous outpouring of support.
Mark said that the Rotary Club has been preparing for the volcano response since last year, December, when the volcano was still in its effusive stage.
Had a joint meeting with our members and with our boards and the Rotary Club of St. Vincent South, and also I believe the Rotaractors were involved in that meeting also. And we had our district governor and the head of the disaster committee for the district involved, and some other persons from the district. And a committee was put together for that reason. Now, the committee was put together, and I know that Daniel was heading that. And I guess we all did not expect to be here. We certainly didn't we knew it was going to happen, or that it could happen, but we didn't expect April the 9th to actually happen. But it did. And
in some COVID-related news now, 6 new positive cases were reported from 78 samples processed on April 26, 2021, resulting in a positivity rate of 7.7%. No new recoveries were recorded, leaving the number of total recoveries at 1,711. 128 cases are currently active, and 11 persons with COVID-19 have died. 1,850 cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The public is urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance, and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.